another episode of Geek Shop. I'm Chetan. With me is
Chris,
Chris. How are you, Chris?
a little chilly today, actually. I'm wearing a sweatshirt.
Yeah, it
It's a
is chilly. Yeah. Oh,
Superman.
wow. Geek sweatshirt. Okay. I have a Flash one somewhere. My
Ah,
kids bought me for many years ago. Oh, you should
ah.
have told me. I would have wore it.
I've got the Superman one and I've got a Batman one too.
Oh, okay. So, Chris, we talked about American comics. We
Hmm.
talked about manga comics, some Asian comics, European comics.
Yep.
Now, here's another brand of comics and comic creators that technically don't fall into the European category for some reason.
Okay.
British comics.
Yeah, British comic books are a little bit of their own beast.
They don't fall into they're kind of a mixture of everything we mentioned.
Yeah, they're sort of like the crossover, like the in between your sort of purely European comic books and your North American comic books. Like it's really that in between stage.
Yeah, yeah, because they have their own unique set of tone, what do you call it, characters, tone of the books and stuff that's different from manga, North American and European comics.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, there's also like a certain amount of it that was been exported, but there was a certain amount that I knew about that never really. Like I went to Europe when I was a kid in 1987, and my mom got me some comic books while we were there, and they're giant in England, and they're giant things, almost newspaper size, like
Oh yes, yes,
20-page things, and most of them
yes.
were humor stuff. But there was a GI Joe one that I got, and there was a
Action
couple other
Force.
Action Man.
No, or Action Force, wasn't it?
I got Action Man. That was the GI Joe
Oh
equivalent.
man. Oh, okay.
Yeah, Action Man. And so like maybe they
Okay.
changed it, maybe they updated it because Action Man's kind of a lame name for who's this one Action Man? Why is he?
Yeah.
But yeah,
Oh,
so I had a few sort of like superhero stuff, but that wasn't any of the 2000 AD stuff. That was more sort of kid and superhero related than anything else.
one thing I have noticed with British comics is, um, unlike European comics, they're heavily influenced by North American superhero comics.
It's funny because I almost think that a lot of the superhero comics from English comic books are influenced by it, but almost like the negative. Like they kind of
Yes,
look at it and
yes,
are like, wow, Superman could be a real jerk if he used his powers for bad. So let's make that character.
yes,
Or Judge Dredd is a great example of
yes.
like very anti-hero. Like they really did anti-hero long before we had
They
our
did.
Lobos and stuff like that. Like it was the British comic book scene that really dug into that.
Oh yeah, they really went into all of that stuff. I mean, and I mean, we'll talk later about the creators, like artists and writers that came about on those books. But yeah, Judge Dredd was one of the books. What else? Um, Stronktonium Dog, something like that. That was the name. Rogue Trooper and things like that. I mean,
Yeah.
they're unique. They're different.
Yeah. And Judge Dredd was like that went off. Like there was all the different judges and stuff like that. I didn't get into that too much of the obscure Judge Dredd stuff. I read a few of the sort of mainstream ones, but there was like all the Judge Death and all the other ones that later on got their own series as well. So
2000 AD did a reprint of some of the old superhero comics they did, and they collected them in hardcovers. And I ordered some of them from 2000 AD in the UK, and I'll put an image up because right now, um, my situation, I can't access my comics or stuff right now because we've had flooding in our house, so I can't access any of that stuff. But I do have a couple of trade paperbacks, and they even had a one of the ones I ordered was a series based on Western comics.
okay, that's kind of weird considering they didn't
And
really have a Wild West. So I guess they were just copying the spaghetti
yeah,
Western stuff.
and the artist on it, I hope I pronounce his name right, Carlos Exerio. He was the main artist on Judge Dredd for a long time,
Yeah, yeah.
and he did the artwork on it. And if I'm not sure, John Wagner wrote it. I think it might have been John Wagner who wrote it, but I have to look into the details of the book.
Yeah. Tank Girl would also technically be a British comic too, wouldn't it?
Yeah, Tank Girl. Yeah, and again, it's that anti-hero type of approach to it.
Yeah, I could see Tank Girl though living in the Judge Dredd world. Like there was sort of the idea that there was the place outside of the city in Judge
Yes,
Dredd.
that's it.
I could
Yeah.
kind of see Tank Girl living there.
And but here's the thing, like you said, one thing what the British comics they were good for is they took the superhero stuff from North America and did a different twist on it. But a lot of her stories are based in America or has the American theme to it.
A lot of them have the American theme of what it would happen to the United States after the apocalypse.
And now is British comics had a lot of that theme.
Yeah, yeah. I'm trying to think if I can know of any British comics that actually took place in the UK, like specifically
I,
like This Is England.
I mean, you had Captain Britain. I mean, that was the original. I mean, technically that's Marvel still, but
Yeah.
the character was based, I mean, come on, name Captain Britain, but that was all British based and stuff like that. Do I
Like
remember the
actually like
other?
British made comics that took place in UK. Like, I'm sure there was like, well, like the funny pages that I got when I was a kid, those were all definitely took place. Like they would talk about going to Brighton and
Yeah,
Blackpool and stuff like that. So there was that influence in it for sure for like the funny pages. But as far as like a superhero, like have they ever done a British superhero or something like that
well,
that actually takes place there?
the superhero book I have, I'll put an image up once I get the information on it. That was, as far as if I remember, that was based. Yeah, that was a British superhero.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because when I think of British comic books, I often think of like apocalyptic world and it kind of looks like the US.
Yeah, because I'm thinking of like you said, Judge Dredd, Rogue Trooper, ABC Warriors, and all those
Yeah,
books. They
Tank
are
Girl.
just yeah, Tank Girl. They're all post some wars happened or something's happened.
Generally, it's like there's been, well, Tank Girl wasn't the lack of water and sort of
But that's on
do.
the movie. I think in the comic, it was a little bit different.
Okay. I've read the few of the comics, but I think I've probably seen the movie since I actually watched the movie like maybe a year or two ago. It was on like one of those
Okay.
free streaming things like Tubi or something like that.
Yes.
And so I saw it and I was like, I don't know. There was one day I was doing some drawing. I was like, huh, maybe I'll watch Tank Girl. I haven't seen that in a while. It kind of didn't hold up. It was okay. Um, but it was but yeah, so that's the last story I remember is that story with
That was my, we had the episode where we talked about, being influenced by European comics and the creators from the Europe. Now, seeing, like we were talking about heavy metal and some of the other books and stuff. I remember seeing like, first time I mean, British comic. I think the first one I remember is Judge Dredd because,
yeah
you know, first of all, Boland's covers blew you away. It made you want to look at that book.
yeah
And I think it was Eagle Comics who did those.
yeah
And, they blew me away in finding out that this is a British comic. And it was just like, it was something different than what we saw here.
yeah. Simon Beasley came out of that too, didn't he?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think
Simon
he.
Beasley. Yeah. Lot of creative artists from and writers came out of 2000 AD and all those books.
It's funny because a lot of this sort of there was during the '90s boom, there was sort of this interest in less in sort of anti-heroes in comic books, like Punisher and everybody started to become really famous and Lobo, and so it's funny because a lot of the artists that led that were actually British writers. And even Vertigo had a lot of British, like sort of darker
I
stuff that came out of the '90s was very British backed
But
by
at
the
that
creators.
time, I think it started in the late '80s when or mid '80s when I mean the most famous British comic creator, Alan Moore came over. You know, when he came over, and I mean he wasn't gritty and all that stuff. He was just a good storyteller.
He
You
was
know,
very prolific.
and
Like he wrote a
yeah,
lot.
and his Swamp Thing, I mean, it's amazing to this day,
Yeah.
rereading it and stuff like that. It's amazing. Then in the '90s, when they did the British invasion, it was interesting because DC from the story I remember, DC Karen Berger went out and searched out a lot of these writers and said, you know what, writers and artists, and said, hey, come over, do what you
Yeah.
want. What characters do you want to do?
I think
And
Vertigo helped with
he'll
that too.
that's it. Yeah, Neil Gaiman, Grant Morrison, Peter Milligan, Simon Beasley, Mark Buckingham, Jamie
Yeah.
Delano. Those are some of the creators that came over. And personally, speaking on my personal level, it influenced a lot of me. I mean, it blew me away because
TikTok Tom
it
is
was
very
different.
British. TikTok Tom looks very British. If you sort of like, it definitely has a Canadian appeal, like, and you sort of write about Canadian things, but like when you look at the style of it, it's got a very sort of British Vertigo feel to it a little bit. So
Now, I know we're going to get arguments, but Canada doesn't really have a, you know, comics, I mean, except for us creating our own comics weren't, I mean, except for Vortex comics. I mean, Vortex was beyond, they were beyond their time. They were
well,
amazing creators.
I guess so. I mean, there's a lot of creators though that came out of Canada that sort of definitely influenced style, like Todd McFarlane. Who
Oh
else
no,
is
no,
there?
influence and stuff, but that's enough. Actually, you know what? We have to do another episode on maybe Canadian creators.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes,
Didn't you used to know Stephen Platt? Maybe he'll be a guest.
yes. Canada Day is coming up. Let's do a Canada Day, Canada comic special.
There you go, for sure.
There you go. No, but the British one, no, even not even just writers that were, unique and different from what we read in North America. Even the art style artists were different. And
Yeah,
like you
yeah.
said, Simon Bisley is one of the main ones. Simon Bisley, Brian Boland, you look and Dave Gibbons, you look at those guys, they were different.
Yeah, they didn't. They like. It's almost like they all those British guys studied anatomy until they were like 25 years old, and then decided they would just completely forget everything they learned. Like you can obviously tell that they know it,
Yeah.
but they just ignore the rules.
I remember in the 80s, I used to read Green Lantern. And at that time, Joe Staton was the artist. And reading, Steve Englehart, I think, wrote a lot of the stories at that time, and Len Wein. And all of a sudden, in the middle of one of the issues, Dave Gibbons does a Green Lantern story and blew me away.
It's
It's
so
like,
weird.
wow. Yeah. And he did a run for almost a year, 2 years on it.
Yeah, I think a lot of those guys, like, it's funny. A lot of the British guys, when you look at their drawings, their pages seem like they can work really fast, but their paintings look like they take millennia.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It's like it's because like when you look at like a lot of those British guys' drawings, again, because they don't worry about getting the anatomy right or even getting like I've seen you see like the character like you'll see Green Lantern on one page and then 2 pages later he looks totally different. Like it's like
Yeah.
there's no model sheet at all. It's just and even Jamie Hewitt, he was a big one because like he would go from like a super realistic to like literally a stickman or Charlie Brown style,
Stickman, yeah. And
so
same thing with you're right. Yeah, I mean the painterly styles and stuff. I'm thinking of, like Glenn Fabry who did Preacher covers.
yeah.
And he did some interior work also. I mean, even his work, you look at some of it's like highly detailed art. And other times it's just simple.
Yeah, yeah, they really sort of allowed themselves to use the tools, and the style would often dictate the tone of the story instead of focusing on making beautiful art every
And
single panel.
mention and mentioning that, one of the other artists I remember Green Lantern books reading, and out of nowhere you're looking at it and going, "What the hell is this?" And it was so weird looking at his work, but honestly, I looked at it for even to this day, I look at his work and go, "How does this guy do it?" Kevin O'Neill, who
Yeah,
did martial law,
yeah, that's true. The one thing
and
I would
and he
say,
and
um,
think about him doing Green Lantern.
yeah, the one I imagine that the British guys really liked drawing North American comic books because North American comic artists make their costumes really simple. Whereas British comic book artists, like Judge, I challenge anybody to draw Judge Dredd and particularly his shoulder.
Oh, that's what I was going to say. That eagle on the shoulder. I tried drawing that. That's hard.
Yeah, there's like no part of it that's easy to draw, like of those characters. It's like, can you imagine? You're like, I'm gonna invent a character, where his shoulder is going to take me 3 hours to draw every single time.
Yeah.
I'd be spending most of my time figuring out how to hide his shoulder in every single shot.
I remember looking at Judge Dredd, and Brian Boland's work blew me away. And later on, he did Camelot 3000, and even that, to this day, I still look at that book and go, "How this guy's amazing," and the detail he puts into his work.
Yeah. Although I'm trying to think now if there's any modern British artists that are sort of really trending or interesting
Right
that
now.
aren't just
No,
following their.
there are Gary Frank is British. He did Supergirl. He's doing stuff with Jeff Johns on trying to remember the Geiger, I think it's called, series he's doing. And Gary Frank, what else? Alan Davis is a really good British artist. Writer wise, you still have the usual bunch like Grant Morrison, Peter Milligan, and I mean Alan Moore says he's not doing comics anymore. So you still have some few of the older guys, but
Yeah,
newer
well,
ones I would say would be like artist wise would be Gary Frank. That's amazing.
okay. I'm not familiar with the stuff, but I uh I just wonder if there's be if there's a scene like where they're gonna sort of change the way art because those guys in the 80s and 90s really changed the way.
They changed a lot. Yeah, they changed a lot of it. And nowadays, I think with comics, it's whether it's British, UK, I mean British, European, or North American comics, the changes. I don't know if the change anything that unique comes in, it's going to be huge because now we're back to that formula, house styles and all that stuff. And again, we had that episode where why we don't buy comics, and
Yeah,
it's and that's one of the issues I think we had where story and art just wasn't worth it anymore.
yeah. I would even say that Alex Ross would not have a career if it wasn't for the Brits.
But he was around before the British invasion.
I don't know. I think he really started
No,
start
he
taking off at the beginning of like the British like Beasley was already doing Lobo by the time um whatchamacallit, the Marvels came out.
no, but was he?
Yeah, yeah,
Oh, okay,
yeah.
okay.
Beasley was already doing Lobo by that point. So it's like because I
Yeah,
think that
because
allowing the painterly look that Alex Ross does wouldn't exist unless people were sort of hip on the British sort of uber.
you're right. In a way, you're right because in the 80s, when I'm just speaking on mainstream Marvel and DC, not the other independent companies, but for example, Marvel, when they had the Epic line, they had painterly books like by John J. Moof and Kent Williams. But I mean, it was popular, but they were on their side Epic logo
Yeah,
and never got, further than that. And then in the 90s, when Vertigo and DC they started doing a lot of painterly stuff, covers and stuff. And I think on Simon Bisley is a huge influence and a huge person that did helped that. But I think Neil Gaiman and Dave McKean helped out a lot on that
yeah,
also. With the Sandman stuff. And I think that opened doors to say, hey, comics could be art. I mean,
yeah,
it's a wrong thing to say all comic work is art, but where it opened doors for people and say, hey, we could do this type of work. We could have a painterly covers, painterly comics, and people will want it. Before Marvel just had their epic line put on the side and said, here, do it for this.
yeah, yeah. Was Judge Dredd did Epic republish a few of the Judge Dredds?
Epic?
I
No,
thought they.
DC did a line of Judge Dredd comics for a while in the early 90s.
Yeah, I
And
thought.
I think they did a series for, I'm taking a guess, a couple of years now, for a few years, and it ended. I don't think Marvel did. Marvel did martial law.
Yeah, I wonder if DC did Judge Dredd because maybe the movie was Warner Brothers, and so they had the rights.
Probably, maybe, yeah.
Because I know that
Well,
the Sylvester Stallone movie was
yeah,
might have been Warner Brothers, and if Warner Brothers has the rights, then
but
DC has the
it didn't
rights.
last that long. So hate to say it, it's one of those things where, you know, this is a thing I read on British music bands. there's a lot of British music bands that have been, hugely popular, but they never cracked into the North American market.
Yeah.
And, and I think comics are the same way where, Americans like their certain things and, they don't like change too much.
Although, I mean, it's only comic adjacent, but Gorillas is very
Yeah,
much that.
yeah,
It's British. It's British. It looks British. It's very British. It's done, obviously, it's done by two Brits. And it definitely has the look of that. And I think they're right now as we speak, or yesterday, I think I saw a trailer. They're doing like a
yeah,
15-minute.
for an animated piece, yeah,
Yeah,
and
so
that looks good.
it
But
does. It looks
again,
amazing.
but even Judge Dredd, if you look at it outside of comic shops, you would never see Judge Dredd.
Other than Sylvester Stallone.
Yeah, that's it. And I hate to say Stallone really didn't help Judge Dredd. I mean,
Yeah,
it's just I mean the visuals weren't bad. I like the main villain, I forgot his name, the one with the robotic guy and the
I forget his name.
mechanical arm. They had the ABC robot and a couple other things. They looked visually, it wasn't bad, but story wise, come on. I mean, story and the acting was so bad in that movie,
Well, the problem with the movie was they made Judge Dredd a hero. Like he's not really a hero.
No, and you know what? And speaking of Judge Dredd, the Carl Urban version of Judge Dredd was amazing. I love that movie
Yeah,
because I mean, you have a main actor who's popular, you give him very little lines, and you don't see his face. You
yeah.
know,
That was a big part of the Sylvester Stallone Judge Dredd movie is he barely ever wore the helmet.
yeah, and I remember reading that he did not want to be, he wanted to be shown, his face. He wanted people to see his face, and it's like, well, you know what, the character in the comics, you never saw his face.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if I ever saw him without a helmet.
I think that was the whole appeal to the character. You just had this, faceless character that was judge, jury, and executioner.
Yeah, and I also liked that some of the judges went a little wacky in the Judge Dredd comic books.
Yeah,
They got
and Judge
extreme.
Dredd, when you read Judge Dredd and Judge Anderson, Judge Dredd, Judge Death stories, they're really good stories. I mean, they're fun stories.
Yeah,
And again, North American market never caught on, but they were, trying to remember um, John Wagner, Pat Mills. I think even Garth Ennis wrote some Judge Dredd books.
yeah. Garth Ennis, he wrote The Boys, didn't he?
Yeah, yeah,
That's a very British. Like I don't know if you've read that, but that's extremely British. Like
yeah.
it's all about superheroes being like the worst human beings in the world. And it isn't quite a post-apocalyptic world, but it's like it's nearing that.
Oh yeah, and Garth Ennis is one of those other guys that came during the British invasion to work on Preacher, and I mean, we could go on and on about Preacher, you know, uh, and some of the Garth Ennis example. And here's where the British talent shows off, especially comic wise. And if you look at it, Hellblazer comic had amazing British writers and British artists on it.
Yeah.
John Ridgway, Dave McKean, um, Sean Phillips. Um, you know, it's skipping my mind. There's a lot of talented British creators on it. So Hellblazer is one of the books I would highly recommend to anyone who wants to, look at British creators, British artists. It had everything in it.
Yeah. I think Vertigo was pretty good about. I think they made friends with a lot of Brits. And so then
I
they would
think
say,
so. Yeah.
then they would be like, oh, well, you should get my buddy in here. He's a good artist. And then they would
Yeah.
have the guys who worked on like 2000 AD and they would all just sort of get together. And so for a while, it was basically just a group. It was just British comics moved to the US for a while.
That's it. Yes. But again, going back to our original talk, British comics were unique. I mean, I remember picking up, I remember randomly going to the stores and stuff. And you're right, they had magazine size formats. They were never comic size formats.
Yeah.
They were larger formats, and it was different. And you know what? It was, I remember just buying them because I had no idea who this guy Alan Moore was, John Wagner, Grant Morrison at that time. I was amazed by the art style. The
Yeah.
art just blew me away because it was something different than what I've seen before.
I guess the question though is there anybody new? Is there any like new stuff coming out of the UK that now? Because to be honest, a lot of it I hear is sort of the old guard from that time. And there are some new artists, but a lot of them seem to be doing house style, not necessarily like the influence like
But again,
2000 AD had.
I think we should do a research on it and do another episode on that and connect it to even European comics because even European comics, we could ask that same question. What are the new creators coming out? Unlike manga, where manga has, I mean, studios with dozens of artists and things that every year there's, someone new coming out all the time,
Yeah.
because it's a factory type of approach
Yeah.
where European and British comics, we should do a follow-up episode and find out who some of the new talents that are coming out of you know,
Yeah.
those
Although
areas.
I think also to some degree, there's a lot of artists that don't come out. They stay there because there's enough of interest in comic books in Europe and in
Oh no,
um,
yeah,
UK that they don't have to like come on our radar for North Americans. So
I agree on that. I agree. I mean, I'm sure there's, a lot of artists we probably follow on in Instagram and stuff like that might be British artists. We don't know.
yeah, yeah. And like when we did our episode about European comics, I sort of showed off that there is a lot of indie stuff in Europe right now.
Yes.
And so I think to some degree Europe can sort of have the indie market and they don't have and UK might be the same where they can have this indie market and do whatever they want and they don't have to like emerge in the US. There's no reason to anymore. So
No, no. Nowadays, you can get exposure anywhere. So, okay, let's do a follow-up episode on that.
sounds
I think
good.
this is a good way to end the episode.
Sounds good.